Good to have you on the call today, everyone. So we're going to be talking today about behaviour change and largely about how the COM-B model, which some of you might have heard of before, can be applied and support you with your approaches when you're engaging with communities. So I'm just waiting for the presentation to load, and hopefully Esme can tell me if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you very much. So first of all, I mean, for the purpose of what we're talking about today, the behaviour change that I'm going to be focusing on is about looking at what causes our behaviours. And essentially, it's a result of individual, social and environmental factors. There's a lot of things that influence what we do. And in order to change behaviours, we have to think about things that help or stop those behaviours from happening as well. And I think it's really key to realise that behaviour change is core to all of these topic areas. So all the webinars that are coming up, there's elements of behaviours involved there. And even if it's the behaviours involved with somebody booking an appointment to see somebody or get help, there's things that we can think about how to get people to engage in those sorts of activities. So today I'm going to be focusing largely, the examples I'll give will be about healthy eating and physical activity, but just to be aware that all of those topic areas can be applied to other things as well. So I'm not sure how many of you will have seen this model before, but it's called the behaviour change wheel. So it looks very complicated and there's lots of spinning bits, and I'm sure it's a wonderful tool to interact if you had it on paper. But essentially what it's saying is this is a theory of change, and if we wanted to develop an intervention to shift someone's behaviour, this is a theory of change that can help us think about the sorts of options that there are. So essentially it's things like whether education is needed, which you can see at the top of the red. It might be that you need to have different laws built in so that people aren't allowed to sell cigarettes visible behind counters and so on. So there's different ways that we can shape behaviour. But today what we're going to be doing is focusing just on this centre area, which is about capability, opportunity and motivation. And that's what's called the COM-B model. So in essence, what that is our capability to do something influences our behaviours. So that's things like, do we have the knowledge and the skills, abilities needed in order to do a particular behaviour? Also, there's opportunity. So do we have the opportunity to do the behaviour? So often this is external things, so not necessarily within the person, but the environment around them. But then also motivation. So this is the internal processes that influence our decisions and whether we want to do this behaviour at all. Because if we don't want to do something, it's very unlikely that the behaviour will actually take place. So in order for a behaviour to take place, all three of those factors have to be considered. You have to be capable, you have to have the opportunity, and you have to be motivated. So it's really important when we're looking at why people are or aren't doing behaviours that we consider it from these different perspectives, and it can really help with working out what support somebody needs. So I'm going to go into more detail about each of these now. So the capability element, that's it includes things including psychological ability, which sounds a bit much as a term, but essentially it's things like, does somebody know what foods are needed for a balanced diet? Because if they don't even know what the core is to a diet, then they're not going to change the behaviour because they're not going to know that that's what's required. So it might be that they need access to education or training resources, but it can also be things like if somebody is suffering from anxiety or depression or stress, it can make it really difficult to plan. So rather than tackling the behaviour head on, it might be that they need some support to either have support with their mental health, and it can also be support with introducing planning techniques to make it easier to cope with the condition they might be suffering with on a long-term basis. So the approach that's needed might depend on what the particular challenges they've got. It can be things like planning, helping with meal planning, or planning in when exercise will happen if they've got so much on in their life and they're really stressed and they can't think beyond the moment that they're living in. Sometimes having someone there to help them support planning in how they're going to achieve this goal can be really, really valuable. the physical ability side of things, it can be stuff like, do they know how to cook? Do they need access to skills workshops or training, or things happening in the community where they can develop those cooking skills? If it was in an exercise perspective, you could look at, do they know what exercises to do in a gym? Because if somebody goes somewhere and doesn't know how to do a task, I think there's a lot of assumptions that people would go, oh, you just exercise, but people are like, well, how long for and how intense, and where do I get started? So if that's a barrier, that's something that people can have support with as well. So solutions could be there. There's lots of online plans, for example, things like Couch to 5K, where there's an app that says how you can get started with exercise and gives you a really clear thing to follow with how much you need to walk and run each day, and you can build up physical activity gradually. But that sort of planning can help with helping them know what they need to do to achieve that behaviour. Also, there can be things like if somebody suffers from pain or a condition that makes it difficult to exercise, they could need support with coming up with an adapted exercise plan, or considering different types of things they could do, or support services that can help. So if there's a physical ability that's stopping them from engaging these behaviours, it won't be able to happen. So sometimes it can be really practical support, or sometimes it can be more they need signposting to somewhere else to go for additional support as well. And also, sometimes people might not believe they have the physical ability to do a behaviour, but they actually could be capable. So I think sometimes it's making somebody realise their potential, realising there are people like them that they thought, oh, I could never do this, but actually I could after all. And I think sometimes that's the sort of approach that's needed as well. So it could be about connecting people to other people like them in their community and realising that they can achieve these things. And also letting people know you don't have to be really physically skilled or psychologically able to do these things straight away. Just starting on that journey and letting them know that their skills and abilities will develop over time, and keeping positive in that way as well. The next thing that I'm going to look at is opportunity. So again, this is split down into two sections. So we need to have the physical opportunity to do a behaviour, and also the social opportunity. So with physical opportunities, it's things like having the time to do it, the location, resources. So this could be things like if somebody doesn't feel they've got the time or money to cook healthily, that could be a real barrier to changing eating habits. But solutions could be sharing links to cheap and quick meals to cook. And if they've got a resource that they go, actually, no, I know I have got time for those. It could be that somebody hasn't got childcare, so they can't exercise, and solutions could be sharing about exercise classes where you can take your baby with you, or a local pushchair or running group in a park where they go with other people. It might be that there's no exercises classes available at a time that suits someone, and solutions could be YouTube classes, or it could be, again, that kind of couch to 5K approach where you can do it alone at home. If somebody hasn't got a car and no access to bus routes to take them to the gym, means that somebody could be capable and motivated, but they haven't got the opportunity to do the behaviour that they want to, and therefore they don't make the change in behaviour. So I think sometimes if you recognise what's stopping them, it's a very different solution that reveals itself. In terms of social opportunities, it can be the result of social factors, it can be cultural norms in your family or where you live, and also social cues can have an impact too. So a simple example is that if you don't have a friend to exercise with, that might be a barrier to engaging with activities. And solutions there could be introducing them to the local park run, which there's loads of parks all across the city that have runs every weekend, or introducing people to a community group or community setting that has classes. And the good thing is that you're introducing people to a social network as well, which is what some people need to have to be able to feel engaged. Also, cultural norms are really important, because if you've got a situation where men and women don't exercise together, then women only times at leisure centres are absolutely vital to make sure that people have access. So if you're seeing that somebody's not engaging with a particular project, really genuinely asking them why and what's driving that, there could be such a simple solution. So I think that's really key as well, being aware of any cultural implications of things that you want people to engage with, or things that you think they could be involved with. The other side could be that if somebody else cooks meals in the household and they don't have any power or the opportunity to change the food on offer, that can be a huge barrier. So there, it might not be so much about getting them inspired and wanting to change what they eat, but coming up with different ways that and solutions to shifting their family's eating habits and how they can convince the person that is doing all the cooking that something else needs to be on offer. So as I said, the solution will very much depend on what the actual barrier is. Finally, as part of the COM-B model in practice, motivation is really key, and there's reflective motivation and automatic motivation, which sounds a bit complicated, but essentially reflective motivation means that sort of analytical decision making, consciously making a plan to do something. So your motivation there could be considering the long-term benefits of physical exercise or healthy eating, and you're motivated because you're like, yeah, actually, logically, I really do want to be healthy and there for my kids as they grow up, and I want to have more energy so I can enjoy life. And that's a very conscious thing, like, yes, that is definitely something that I value and I want to do. It could also be that somebody really wants to win badges on their exercise app. And to achieve goals, they want to be able to say that they've won these different levels and so on whatever program they're doing. Those are very conscious things that people are motivated by. The automatic motivation is much more about our desires, our impulses, our inhibitions, and this is where our habits and emotions really come in. So the difference here is it's not so much just about wanting to get all the badges on an exercise app to say, oh yes, I've leveled up and I've done well, but it's actually the satisfaction that you feel when that happens. So when that motivating thing of, yes, I did it and I've leveled up. My husband, for sure, he has got an Apple Watch and he always wants to get the next level and be motivated by that, whereas that type of motivation isn't something that connects with me. So I think that's why you've really got to adapt approaches according to the person. And this is why it's so important to have approaches that are connected with real people and communities, because if you know them and you go, actually, no, you love compute games and leveling up. Have you thought about doing it through an app? And also there's something to be said for competition between friends with and family with some people as well. So if you were really motivated by being the winner out of your families and friends on one of the apps, if you wanted to be able to say that you'd done really well that month or you'd made the biggest improvement, that's a sort of intrinsic automatic motivation that you like. The satisfaction of being really achieving something can be incredibly motivating. On the other hand, things that other people enjoy, like my motivation is more driven by how much I enjoy the exercise. So if I want to go somewhere, it's because it's fun. It's not because of the exercise itself. It's because there's people there and it's a bit of a laugh and we've had a really good time. And that's what's motivated me to attend that, is because it's something that's engaging and fun. Also, it can be things like if you want to try a healthy recipe because your friend recommended it and said it was delicious and the whole family loved it, that temptation of going, oh, I want to try some delicious food too, that's a really motivating factor. Being able to spend time with your friends and socialise when you walk together. Often it's not the walking that's motivated you, it's being able to spend time with your friends and have a little chat when you can't normally justify having a chat on the phone, but you can if you say, oh, I'm doing it with exercise. In that situation, it's not actually the exercise that you're going for. You're going to see your friends and you just happen to be walking. And I think that's an important distinction in terms of what's motivating people. And essentially, I think we'd all agree, if something feels like a lot of effort, it's boring, it's hard work, or a meal doesn't taste nice, you're not going to feel much motivation to do that. So it's really key that if we look at the COM-B model as a whole, if the motivation's not there and they're not interested in the behaviour that you're asking them to do, then there's going to be huge barriers to getting them to actually want to do it. Also, if somebody's really busy at work with kids, and they're balancing all sorts of things in life, they don't have the capability or the opportunity to be physically active. And then when you think about what is their motivation is to find time to relax and be inactive. You can see how no matter what you've got with your capability and opportunity, your motivation is going to be influenced by that. So if you were able to make it so they weren't so hectic and busy and they did have time, their motivations might change. They might go, actually, I do get time to relax. And now I can think about things like going out for a run or going to a class or something. So in those situations, sometimes it's not about changing their motivation, but recognizing that ways that you can make the capability and the opportunities less of a barrier in order to make it the opportunity for the motivation to change. And also, it's really important that behaviours aren't just seen as something somebody needs to do, but also something they want to do. And this can apply to all sorts of topic areas. If somebody knows logically that they should get lots of sleep at night, for example, but they don't particularly want to because they want to stay up watching films, it's going to be difficult to convince them to change. Whereas actually, if they do have some good sleep and the next day they wake up, they're like, oh my, I feel amazing, and they have loads of fun with their friends, I think that's when you start getting the motivation, because they recognise the value of that behaviour to them. And next, I'm just going to explore how we maintain behaviour. So there's things like self-regulation. So this basically is like, how do you deal with temptations? And like, if you've got you've got a bar of chocolate in the cupboard and like you really are tempted and you've got impulsive need to try it, there the self-regulation would be thinking of, okay, how can I cope with the fact that that's there? And it might be a choice to say, okay, we're not going to keep chocolate in the cupboard anymore because I cannot deal with that that temptation. It can also be having a really clear goal and going, actually, no, this is something I really want to do, and that motivation to work towards that goal and monitor how you're doing can be really powerful as well. With motivation, it's things like self-regulation. So I'm sorry, I've jumped to there. So sorry, with the self-regulation, it involves coping with barriers, overcoming temptation, and maintaining lapses and avoiding relapses. So managing relapses, sorry. So if somebody does slip up and have chocolate, they need to feel like they don't have to give up on all of it. Instead, you go, actually, this is how it happened and this is how we can avoid that next time. And seeing that as something that you're working towards gradually, and it's a journey, it's not a one-time event. Motivation can be things like, as I said before, making sure that it's a behaviour they actually enjoy, and the change that they're getting, like if they have lost weight, or they've got more energy and they've been able to play with their friends and see their family more because they've been healthier, or because they've been able to have enough sleep, then the motivation then can come from those sorts of factors of realising a change in their life is something that they're really happy with. Environmental and social influences. So there's got to be a supporting environment and positive social influences. So if you've got other people in the household or in the friendship groups that are having a negative effect on their behaviours, then exploring that is really important as well. And this is where people such as yourselves are really important as well, because sometimes the motivation can come from someone they trust in their community or who they see on a regular basis. He goes, oh, have you considered doing this? And that can actually be a real trigger point for people changing their lives. For example, my husband got a really high blood pressure about 4 years ago, and he went into the doctors and they said, you're about to have a heart attack. Like, he didn't look physically that unhealthy. But they said he's about to have a heart attack. I've never seen somebody be so motivated in all my life. Like, that wouldn't have worked from anybody else saying, oh, why do you eat so many takeaways? Or why do you do this? That didn't have any effects on him. But a doctor saying, your blood pressure is definitely a problem, and having those numbers attached to it, that was hugely motivating, and it's because it was coming from somebody that he trusted and he respected their opinion. And since then he's changed his lifestyle, and now he's realized he actually enjoys the exercise, he feels better, he's got more energy, and that's the motivation that's keeping him going. So it's important to see what's the trigger point to get them started on a journey, and then also looking at how they stay motivated to carry on with those behaviours. And the starting of a behaviour can be quite different to what makes you maintain it afterwards. Also, habits are key. So if you have been doing something so regularly that it's just a habit, it's much easier to maintain it. Like if you habitually always make your dinner for work the night before and then you take it in the next day, that's something that's much easier to maintain, because that's just what you automatically do. Whereas if it's always something that's extra effort and outside of the norm, it can be really difficult to maintain those behaviours. Also, there's things like, if you identify as a runner, like, oh, I am a runner, you will keep that behaviour up. Whereas you see yourself as somebody that, I don't really like running, but I just go and do it, you will not maintain that behaviour until your identity changes and you go, no, this is me, this is what I do, I go running, or I do this, or I cook from scratch because I love all these tasty spices and flavours. And I think it's really important to recognise the role of behaviours in people's identities as well. And this is really key, where people don't give up if they've had a little slip up. So we've got here like 1, 2, why not a few? So sometimes if your willpower's giving up on you and you go, oh, I'm just going to have a biscuit, and you're like, oh, well, I had that now, I may as well have another biscuit and a takeaway and do this. So it's the fact that the people can just throw it all out the window because of one tiny slip up, or they don't go running 1 week and then they go, oh well, it's just fizzled out, I've given up, obviously. But it's recognizing that that doesn't have to be the end. Like, it is a journey. So I think it's really important to let everybody know as well that every day is a fresh start. It doesn't matter what you've done before or what your experience was in the past. This is a new beginning, and if you try different methods that resonate more with what motivates you, what your own opportunities are, and what your capabilities are, it's much more likely to stick because it's tailored to what works for you. It's not about what works for the person next door that's got very different life situation and different personality and they like different things. It's about what is suited to those people themselves, and I think that's really key to recognize too. Coping with setbacks is really key. We need to anticipate that they're going to happen. So if people think, oh, I'm a complete failure because I had a setback, that's going to be really demotivating. Whereas instead, if you say, sometimes you're going to have a setback, what are you going to do in that situation? And planning ahead and coping with that situation when it comes up and thinking about it in advance means they're much more likely to get back on track afterwards. So I think that's a really important thing to consider when you're speaking to people, that you don't immediately change your behaviour completely overnight, or very rarely at least. And instead you say, this is going to be just your new lifestyle. This isn't a random behaviour that you're doing as a one-off. This is just a new way of life for you. And every now and again, that type of behaviour will vary, and recognising that will happen is really important. So where somebody does have a bit of a setback and they haven't achieved the behaviour they wanted, it's important to look at what caused the setback, what have they learnt from it, and how do they get back on track? Because if they recognise that the reason they did it was because the cupboard, somebody had bought loads of chocolates for someone's birthday and it was back in the cupboard, and then they like gave into temptation. Well, next time they go, actually, next time we get loads of chocolate, I'm not going to put it in the cupboard because that's just going to be too tempting for me. So next time I'm going to give it to some family members or do something so it's the temptation is out of the way. And I think that's an important thing to reflect on as well. And also, it's really important to realise it's almost like an experiment. You have to, there's trial and error. And sometimes you'll try something and think, oh, this will work for me, and then it didn't quite. But it doesn't mean that that setback is a reason to stop. You go, okay, we can tweak, we can adapt, we can try something different. And you always learn something along the way. Even when it doesn't go right, you go, oh, I know why now, because like this particular thing happened. Like the chocolate was in the cupboard, and I know that's why I gave up. So I think it's about recognizing that it's an ongoing thing, and you reflect and you start again, as opposed to this is the start, this is the end, and that's it. And I think having that idea that something that's more continuous is really helpful too. So in your role, what can you do? I think first of all, it's if you see somebody that needs to do a particular behaviour, whether it's to book in to go for a cervical screening appointment and they've been putting it off because they're really embarrassed, or if it's somebody who wants to stop smoking but they're endlessly tempted by because they've got a friend who keeps offering them a cigarette, there's all these types of things where if you can see that there's a particular behaviour that they want to be able to change, it's important as well to define, like, what is it they want to do? Is it they want to give up smoking? Is it they want to eat more vegetables? It doesn't have to be eating an entire healthy diet that's completely nutritionally balanced. They can have something that's a manageable goal, like, I'm going to eat more vegetables regardless of anything else. And often, naturally, if you eat more vegetables, you tend to eat less other stuff anyway. But that as a goal might be something that somebody feels that is a manageable thing, whereas tackling their entire diet and giving up everything they enjoy might be too much. So I think it's identifying what the exact behaviour is that they want to achieve. Then looking with that sort of COM-B lens, saying what is it about the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation that's either helping or stopping that behaviour from happening. And then, because you've reflected on that, the interventions, the responses that are needed will naturally come about. If you recognise that their barrier is that they haven't got anyone to exercise with, then the solution is to like introduce them to groups where they can get a social network as well as doing exercise, for example. So I think the reflection on this COM-B diagnosis approach is really helpful with that. And then finally, with support, I think that ongoing approach and that support network where you acknowledge and notice when they've done something really well. Like, if if somebody else has recognised that they've done a good job, that is really motivating. I think sometimes people feel like they're on their own and they're trying to do something and no one ever notices that they're trying really hard. And then when they give up, they're also not accountable. Whereas if they know that you're looking at them and you're really proud of what they do, they want to keep it up. And that support network around them can really help as well. So that's all from me at the moment. We've got an opportunity to ask questions now about the webinars in general, and Esme can support with answering those, and also about behaviour change or particular things that you want to explore. So feel free to raise your hands, or there might be things in the chat as well. But yeah.
There's nothing in the chat currently. Just give it a few minutes just to see if anybody's typing.
I just noticed in the chat that Lucy said about not seeing this model before, but it makes a lot of sense. I really love it because it's a common sense model. I've still been trying to rephrase a lot of the things because I think because it's developed by academics, very logical academics that recognise what works in the real world, but they still use terminology that's a bit like not the norm. But I think there's, if you are interested in looking into it more, there's a guide called Achieving Behaviour Change Guide, and it's supposed to be for local government and partners. So if you are in a position where you want to explore some of the challenges or why people aren't doing things either with your service or in your community, or even engaging with the group that you do, it's a really useful document that's got lots of resources and extra questionnaires and things like that. And what you can do is you can explore what the reasons are behind what somebody is or isn't doing, and then it can help guide your next steps. So I would really recommend, we can share the link afterwards as well, but I'd really recommend exploring that if you want to look into the model and how it can apply to what you do more as well.
Cool, thank you.
So I don't think we've got any questions, which is fine. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and we really do hope to see you at our next session, which will be on winter flu vaccines, and that will be on the 18th of October from 6 till 7. And if you haven't done so already, you can register your interest or your place on Eventbrite, and I'll just put the link into the chat here. So yeah, feel free to join us next week for a live session, and then we'll be releasing all the pre-recorded sessions after that.
I've also put the behaviour change guide into the chat as well, so you've got the link.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, that was really useful. Cheers.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.